Hey guys, welcome back to Urology 101. I'm James Farrell and you found my video blog on common topics in urology. If you found me on YouTube, please check out all the other videos that are there, or some of them. I hope you find something that helps you. If you're on my website, all the videos are there too. I'll probably start blogging soon. And you can all follow me on Instagram. Everything is Urology 101. The first part of that's spelled Y-O-U-R. Now, let's get on to today's topic, which I'm going to wade into circumcisions. I have tried to record this video a bunch of times, and I seem to be failing miserably every single time. Part of that is because I know that there are strong feelings, and so I end up couching some of my statements and putting caveats in there. And then I listen to it again, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. So please bear with me. If you have a strong opinion, you can either stop listening now, or get to the end and see what you think before you kind of reform your opinion about what I'm saying. My main people who I want to address here are expecting parents, frankly, who are going to have a son and are pregnant and are trying to figure out, well, can I just get some good information about what to think about? And that's what I really want to try and provide here today. So we'll hit some of the pros, we'll hit some of the cons, we'll talk about the American Academy of Pediatrics, their position statement, and then a little bit about adult circumcisions and what people think when they come in for those. And I hope I give people some stuff to think about that is unbiased. So let's start off with what a circumcision is. It is the removal of the foreskin on the penis. Well, what is the foreskin? The foreskin is a little bit of extra skin that covers the end of the shaft of the penis, called the distal shaft, and then also covers the head of the penis. And you may hear the foreskin called prepuce, and that is just another name for it. And in newborns, this can be done with them awake because they tend not to be entirely sentient for the first few weeks of life. So it's something that is doable without anesthesia at that time. And after that tends to require anesthesia. And there are frankly concerns about recurrent bouts of anesthesia in young kids, and that's a reasonable consideration too. So let's get to some of the supposed benefits for circumcision. Well, the first couple are reduced sexually transmitted diseases and reduced HIV. Having said that, those studies really weren't done in the US. Those studies really don't hold a ton of water. The benefits aren't huge. And plenty of STDs are still spread by people without foreskin, and the same goes for HIV. So it's not as though that's a huge benefit. The next thing to talk about is urinary tract infections. So boys can get them too. Usually they have some urologic anomalies when that's the case. And getting a UTI can often lead to a kidney infection that can scar young kids' kidneys and reduce their function later in life. So that's a concern. Boys who get UTIs is around under 1% as well, so that's not a common thing. And a circumcision will certainly reduce the incidence of that. The problem if they start getting UTIs in the first few months of life is that you usually want to wait until they're like 6 months of age to put them under anesthesia to do a circumcision. So, there's some drawbacks there. It's an anesthetic. But again, UTIs in young boys are still on the side of rare. Maybe not entirely rare, but definitely less common, not the norm. Another supposed benefit would be reduction in penile cancer, and that's actually true. The issue there, though, is that penile cancer diagnoses are about less than 1 in 100,000 yearly, but there is a real benefit if a circumcision is done in childhood or adolescence, and that's borne out in data. Now, there are other benefits. Certainly there are religions that are very supportive of this, and maybe that's just something that's been done repeatedly, so that's why it's supported, but that's within the religion, and I'm not going to get in the way of that or say that that's inappropriate, because they've had their reasons for a long time, and that's what they're comfortable with, and that sits along the cultural side of things, and and that is a reasonable position to have as well. There are some people who would say, well, you're going to look the same as other guys in a locker, and that's important too. Yes and no. I mean, really only about half the adult males in the U.S. are currently circumcised, and only about 30% of only about 30% of males worldwide are circumcised. So to say that that's, the common thing, everybody looks that way, probably doesn't hold as much water as maybe it once did, especially with much more blending of all of our cultures within the U.S. now, which is certainly, diversity is a good thing. So that's probably less of a concern. Let's talk about some of the drawbacks, to a neonatal or newborn circumcision. So one of them certainly is that it's a surgery, right? It's a procedure, it's a risk. There are cosmetic problems that can happen, but the likelihood of somebody having their penis cut off or the head of their their glands cut off, things like that, that's rare. That is exceedingly rare. But hey, that's an actual risk in the procedure. That's true. If you watch the videos, you may think they're kind of barbaric. Fair statement. In terms of people remembering that, I really have not come across that personally. That may be something that is out there, but that's not something that there aren't really formed memories in people who are between 0 and 2 to 3 weeks old. So I don't know that that's a real concern, but I'm sure that there are people out there who feel they remember it, and that's certainly their choice. I'm not taking that away from them either. One of the real things here is a lack of informed consent, right? You're doing a procedure on somebody who is supposedly healthy, and it's a procedure that is not needed, and it's being done without their real input or knowledge or thought. And if that's a sticking point for you, that's completely reasonable. There are supposedly losses of functions from the foreskin. Yes and no. I think there's some truth to say, well, would the circumference of a penis and the girth with loss of foreskin be less? Yeah, that's true. What about the mechanics of just moving the penis in and out around the foreskin? That's true too. But when we talk about some of the losses with the skin regarding sweat and nerve endings and some of that stuff, all skin has nerve endings, sweat glands, things like that. So to say that removing the foreskin removes all of that function and all of that sensation from the shaft of a penis and the head of a penis is not true, because those cells that are left behind that are there for people who have had circumcisions still work and still do those things. And any guy who has a circumcision will tell you that they still feel good during sex. They're still able to have orgasms and feel the normal things. So I don't know that holds a ton of water, but there are some of those functions that's completely reasonable, right? And then longer-term sexual dysfunction. There are people who would say that a circumcision has caused them that, and you can't take that away from those people either. That's out there, and that's true. It's important to note that the American Academy of Pediatrics does not overwhelmingly support or stand against circumcisions. They state that routine newborn circumcisions is not reasonable. There's not enough evidence for that. And that they state that there is some medical benefit that's realized in research in circumcisions. And this is a group of people whose sole purpose is to protect the health and well-being of children. And they are not saying, oh my gosh, don't do a circumcision. They're also not saying, oh my gosh, your kid needs to be circumcised. So recognize that they've looked at data and there's not a strong stance either way. And so it comes back to, well, what do you believe is appropriate and how do you feel about your decision? Because there are benefits and there are risks. The benefits are somewhat minimal, maybe. The risks are also maybe somewhat minimal. And then it comes back to, well, talking with people who you trust and then making a decision. But you're not wrong with either decision. So don't feel guilty necessarily in one way or the other, but try and feel informed and make your decision from that. Now let's talk about adult males a little bit. Most of us in urology who don't see a lot of kids do see a lot of adult males, obviously, and for a variety of reasons, adult guys come in and they want a circumcision. There's a thing on the bottom underside of the penis called the frenulum that attaches the foreskin to the head of the penis on the underside, and that thing tears during sex a lot. And sometimes we can remove just the frenulum, called a frenulotomy or frenulectomy. You make an incision down to the actual penile skin and then over where the frenulum was, and you can leave people's foreskin. Some people want that. Some people want their foreskin removed. Sometimes guys have a hard time pulling their foreskin back later in life. That's called phimosis. Sometimes they don't like the smell here and there, and they have issues with some of that, or just recurrent irritation, itchiness, some of those things. But they end up getting a circumcision for a variety of reasons. If it makes you feel any better, I have not had any of those guys come back to me and say that they are unhappy sexually, that they can't get erections, that they don't feel things, that it doesn't feel good. So that all works. And in terms of saying, well, were they happier with sex before or after? Most of them wanted it removed because they were having a frustrating time with sex. And so on the whole, they seem to be a little happier. But, in terms of sensation, I don't have a lot of guys coming back saying one way or the other. I'm not sure if that provides you a benefit. That's just what I've experienced anecdotally with my patient population. The last thing that I'll touch on is if you keep foreskin around, what are you going to do with it? Well, I do want to stress this. Foreskin does have its own mechanisms to self-clean, and the skin cells underneath will sort of extrude their way out on their own. And it does not need to be retracted. I repeat, it does not need to be retracted if your baby has foreskin. Just allow it to be there. You don't need to clean under it. You don't need to pull it back. That probably increases the chance of an inflammation or infection that's called balanitis. And you're better off just leaving it as is. Eventually, the head of the penis will make its way outside of the foreskin, and that may not even happen until puberty. That concept is called physiologic phimosis, the point that it is normal for foreskin to be over the head of the penis, especially when kids are young. And until adolescence, some kids' foreskin just doesn't retract that much, and that's okay. So there isn't a lot of pulling back and cleaning under it that needs to be done, and that shouldn't be done because it does have its own mechanisms to do that, and eventually the foreskin will pull back. If you are concerned, then it's really worthwhile to go see your doctor to ask them, well, hey, is this normal? Is this okay? That's a completely reasonable thing to do. I hope all this has been helpful. I hope you feel that I have not come down on one side or the other, because I truly don't think that that's the point here. I think there are a lot of shades of gray, and that education is a good thing. And I appreciate everybody's strong opinions. I look forward to your comments, and have a great evening. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.